Anyway,
Yeah.
Charles, let's move on then back to the UK and the Ministry of Defence, and they apparently want to build some tunnels.
They do. It's not entirely clear where, and it does seem like a bizarre story. I spoke last year about HMGCC, His Majesty's Government Communications Centre, which effectively sort of came out of the shadows, but they make gadgets largely concerned with espionage that are for the use of other government departments, or so they said. They launched last year, or at least in the public eye, with a co-creation project to create a device which could read an electronic SIM, which they said was to keep their employees safe and secure. But it did happen to coincide with the widespread rollout of electronic SIMs across the digital spectrum. And of course, this looks just like an IMSI grabber, which is sort of has questionable uses in terms of legitimacy. But nonetheless, yes, they're talking about tunnels, and they've launched another co-creation project here seen on the Catapult website, which is in conjunction with DSTL, Defence Science and Technology Laboratory. And specifically what they say about this is that the challenge is to demonstrate ways of producing subterranean pathways, preferably greater than 2 feet diameter, with minimal chance of being detected. And we'll come back to that bit. They say that underground tunnelling presents an array of opportunities and challenges. So the MOD would like to know how technologies and capabilities could be better harnessed for future operations. Well, what exactly do they mean by that? In particular, there is an interest in how to better access hostile and constrained subterranean environments. Now, it's no coincidence that they are referring back to a document here called Future Cities, which conveniently enough came out in February 2020, just before everything changed. And they have a piece on underground cities in which they say future cities are likely to make increased use of underused and underground spaces. So I referred earlier to being pushed out of the countryside. It appears that there might be a push underground. The subterranean environment can also host tunnels, which can be used to transport material goods and people without being observed by surveillance systems or passing through choke points on the surface. And in terms of the infrastructure, they talk about accommodating growing population densities, and that these cities will see a sharp increase in the amount of occupied vertical buildings. And they finish with a slightly strange sentence: verticality will alter hierarchies and territorial boundaries. I must admit to being not completely certain what they mean by that, but they go on to say that the desire to mitigate pollution and congestion will lead to increasingly controlled traffic management. So we go back to the idea that 15-minute cities are, or at least we're told by the government, not to stop people from doing certain things. And yet here we are in the Future Cities documents. They continue with, and in many cities, cycling and walking will be encouraged by physically constraining vehicular movements. Autonomous forms of transport will become more common, becoming part of the smart city infrastructure. Likewise, many other routine functions of cities will become automated. Now we get to the key bit here with regard to DSTL and HMGCC, which is the military aspect. And they're anticipating that the future operating environment will increasingly become urbanized, and Africa and Asia are developing most rapidly in that department. So that's where the focus will be. They suggest a database of urban areas for potential military operations. The UK military is to be optimized for urban areas. Presumably tunneling will be part of that, and using tunnels. Smart city presents risks and opportunities, but again, they're not specific exactly as to what they mean by that. And then again, thinking about the new government and their energy policy, we talk about the altered definition of critical infrastructure. And of course, it was Ed Miliband who recently declared that solar would be regarded as critical infrastructure. I should also point out that within this document, tunnels in Syria, Lebanon and Gaza are all cited, as are tunnels in China and Mexico. So they do appear to be sort of telegraphing future intent. And then also, just going back a little bit further to last year, we've got the Defence and Security Accelerator. We're going deeper underground, and this one is sort of the other side of it. This is to do with detecting movement in tunnels. So it does look very much like they do want to have a military, if not other capability within tunnels. And just to confirm that this has been sort of going ahead here, we've got 7 Armoured Brigade, the Desert Rats going tunnelling back in July 2022. So quite what's going to happen next, I'm not quite sure, but I will report as and when there's any further information.
Brilliant.